My sister refused to take my daughter to the birthday party she was invited to, saying she doesn't belong with normal kids. What happened when the host called me still has me shaking. I'm Valerie. I've lurked here for years, but never thought I'd have a story dramatic enough to post. I'm shaking a bit while typing this, because even though this happened months ago, the emotions still rise like it's fresh. What started as a simple request to my sister turned into one of the most painful betrayals of my life and ended with a quiet revenge that I didn't plan but fully embraced. I live in a quiet suburb outside Madison, Wisconsin. It's one of those neighborhoods where everyone's lawns are perfectly cut, mailboxes are decorated for every season, and kids ride their bikes freely. My husband Mason and I have one child, our 9-year-old daughter Sylvia. Sylvia is autistic. She's high-functioning, highly verbal, incredibly creative, and has the sweetest heart I've ever known. But as any parent of a neurodivergent child knows, it's not always easy. The world isn't built for kids like her. She struggles with loud noises, sudden changes, and sometimes picks up on social cues a bit differently. But she's learning. We're learning. And most days, we're just like any other family trying to make it through the daily grind. Then there's my sister, Colleen. Colleen and I have always had a strained relationship. We're only 4 years apart, but we couldn't be more different. Growing up, she was the golden child, straight A's, cheerleader, got into a fancy private college. I was the artsy, quiet one, more into drawing and writing. Our parents never played favorites outright, but it was clear who they worried less about. Colleen's parenting style mirrors who she's always been: intense, competitive, image-conscious. She has 2 kids, Dylan, 11, and Zoe, 8. They're the definition of picture perfect. Always in the best extracurriculars, wearing matching holiday outfits, posed for Instagram-worthy family photos. Everything with Colleen is about appearances. I tolerated her subtle jabs about my relaxed parenting style because I wanted my daughter to have cousins she could grow up with. I kept swallowing my pride, always giving Colleen the benefit of the doubt. Until that day. It all started with a birthday invitation. Zoe got invited to Ellie's birthday party. Ellie is a sweet little girl from Zoe's class, and coincidentally, she's also friends with Sylvia through school. The party was being held at a private animal sanctuary just outside of town: baby goats, rabbits, even a rescued sloth. When Sylvia heard about it, her eyes lit up like I hadn't seen in weeks. She loves animals, and she especially loves Ellie. I was thrilled. She was making friends, being included. But of course, life rarely aligns perfectly. Mason had to fly out that weekend for work, and I was scheduled for a critical hospital shift that I couldn't get out of. I'm a trauma nurse, and the hospital was short-staffed. So, I called Colleen. "Hey," I started, keeping my voice light, "I was wondering if you could do me a huge favor and take Sylvia with you to Ellie's party? She's really looking forward to it, and with Mason gone, I just can't swing it." There was a long pause on her end. Too long. Then, she said it. "You really think that's a good idea?" I blinked. "I mean, yeah? She's excited about it. She and Ellie get along great." Another sigh. The kind of sigh people do when they think they're being patient with someone they view as ignorant. "Val, it's going to be a lot. A ton of kids, noise, chaos. You know how she gets when she's overwhelmed. I just think, maybe it's better she sits this one out." I felt my stomach drop. "Colleen, she's doing so much better with crowds lately. We've been practicing. And I wouldn't ask you if I thought it would be a problem." She kept going. "Look, Val, not every environment is suited for her. These kids, they're not like her. She doesn't belong in that kind of environment with normal kids. It's not fair to anyone." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Normal kids. She said it so casually. Like it was just a fact. Like my daughter was some other species. Like it was perfectly reasonable to exclude her. I fought to keep my voice steady. "You're saying she doesn't belong?" Colleen's voice softened in that condescending tone she's perfected. "I'm just being realistic. I don't want Zoe to have to feel responsible for her if she melts down." I was silent for a moment before finally saying, "I see. Thanks anyway." I hung up before I lost my composure completely. That night, I sat Sylvia down. I didn't know how to phrase it without crushing her spirit. I told her that there was a mix-up, and she wouldn't be able to go after all. She tried so hard to be brave, but I saw her little lip quiver. Did I do something bad? She whispered. No, baby. You did absolutely nothing wrong, I said, pulling her into my arms. She nodded, but I could see the disappointment behind her eyes. She's been let down before, classmates not inviting her to sleepovers, birthday parties where she wasn't included because she was different. But this was worse. This was family. The weekend passed. I tried to make it special with a mini movie night, baking cupcakes, and a visit to the zoo. But deep down, I was seething. I kept telling myself to let it go. Pick my battles. Keep the peace. That's what I always do with Colleen. But the universe had other plans. Sunday evening, I got a call from an unknown number. Hello, is this Sylvia's mom? A cheerful voice asked. Yes, who's this? This is Allison Hannigan, Ellie's mom. I hope I'm not interrupting. My heart skipped. No, not at all. She hesitated for a moment, her voice lowering. I wanted to reach out because we were expecting Sylvia at the party. Zoe mentioned she couldn't come because she wasn't like the other kids. I just wanted to check in and make sure everything's okay. Ellie was really sad she wasn't there. I sat in stunned silence, my ears ringing. No, that's not at all what happened, I finally said, my voice cracking. I had to work, and my sister refused to bring her. Allison exhaled. I thought so. Honestly, Zoe parroted it like something she'd heard. I'm so sorry, Valerie. That's unacceptable. I thanked her for calling and hung up. The rage inside me had officially boiled over. For years, I'd swallowed Colleen's passive-aggressive comments, her judgmental glances, her condescending advice. But this was too far. She had gone behind my back, humiliated my daughter, and twisted the story so that even Ellie's parents thought I was the one excluding her. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying every instance where Colleen subtly belittled Sylvia. She probably won't like the loud music. Maybe she shouldn't join the big Easter egg hunt. You know how sensitive she is, maybe she should sit this part out. I thought back to family barbecues where Dylan and Zoe would avoid playing with Sylvia after watching their mother model exclusion. They'd never outright bully her, but they followed their mother's lead, keeping Sylvia at arm's length like she was some fragile inconvenience. The next morning, I called my father. He's old school, but has always had a soft spot for Sylvia. I told him everything, word for word. His voice hardened. I'll deal with your sister, he said firmly. You focus on your girl. Later that night, Colleen called me, livid. Why the hell did you go crying to Dad? She spat. I stayed calm. Because you humiliated my daughter. Because you lied to people. Because you made her feel unwanted. You're so dramatic, Valerie. I was protecting her from embarrassment. You think those kids wouldn't have laughed at her if she had a meltdown? You were protecting yourself, Colleen. Because God forbid your daughter's perfect little image be affected if Sylvia didn't fit your mold of normal. She hung up without another word. And that's when my plan started forming. I didn't want to yell. I didn't want to fight. But I wanted her to feel a taste of what exclusion feels like. I didn't tell Mason the full details right away when he got back from his trip. He knows Colleen and I have always had friction, but this went so much deeper. I wanted to wait until I fully figured out how I wanted to handle it. And the idea was starting to take shape. Not something explosive or ugly. No shouting matches or public confrontations. Just something quiet. Subtle. But very, very clear. You see, Colleen's world is very curated. She thrives on appearances. The perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect family. Their social circle is made up of equally competitive parents. They host neighborhood block parties, school fundraisers, charity brunches. Everything she does revolves around being admired for having her life together. She's on the PTA board, for crying out loud. She craves validation. And I knew exactly where to strike. I started by reaching out to Ellie's mom again. Allison, bless her, was more than understanding. I explained a bit more about what had happened, carefully, without making it sound like gossip. Just facts. And she was horrified. Valerie, she said gently, I can't even imagine how that made you feel. And poor Sylvia, then she offered something I didn't expect. Listen, we're organizing a small after-school club for the kids, sort of a kindness group. A few parents and I have been talking about it, trying to encourage inclusion and empathy, especially for kids who might feel left out. Would Sylvia like to be part of it? I nearly cried. Yes. Yes, absolutely. So, while Colleen prided herself on Zoe's competitive gymnastics trophies and Dylan's robotics medals, I quietly helped build a small community that valued something she never bothered to teach her kids: compassion. The club started with just 4 kids, Ellie, Sylvia, and 2 others from school who'd had their own struggles fitting in. We met every other weekend at different homes. The kids played, worked on art projects, baked cookies for local shelters. Sylvia blossomed. I hadn't seen her so at ease in ages. The other parents, seeing how kind and creative Sylvia was, began inviting us to more events. Backyard movie nights, craft fairs, small weekend trips to local parks. The circle grew. A few parents even privately told me how they'd always found Colleen a bit exhausting. They were drawn to the simple joy of kids being allowed to just be kids without constant comparisons or pressures. And here's where it got interesting. The school PTA had an annual family giving gala. It's basically a giant fundraiser where parents donate to the school's programs and scholarships. Big dinner, silent auctions, lots of photos. Colleen lives for this event. Last year she organized the whole thing and practically floated around the room like a queen bee. This year, Allison nominated me to co-chair the event. At first, I declined. I didn't want to step into Colleen's arena. But Allison gently nudged me. You're already doing so much with the Kindness Club. People really respect you, Valerie. The more I thought about it, the more I realized it was the perfect opportunity. Not to humiliate Colleen. Not directly. But to subtly shine a light on the kind of community I wanted for my daughter, one that values kindness over perfection. Inclusion over exclusion. I accepted. Planning the event meant frequent meetings, group texts, and emails that often included Colleen, who, to no one's surprise, was absolutely fuming. She tried to dominate the early meetings, interrupting my suggestions, pushing her own vendors, dismissing my ideas with passive-aggressive comments like, "Oh, well, that's cute, but I don't know if that's quite elevated enough for our usual standards." I smiled politely. Actually, we've gotten great feedback from the parents. They're really excited about making it more family-friendly this year. When she realized she couldn't strong-arm me, she started trying to sabotage me behind the scenes, suggesting to other board members that I was a bit overwhelmed and probably not used to coordinating something this size. But by then, people had already seen who I really was. Parents who knew me through the Kindness Club pushed back. They supported my ideas. They trusted me. I wasn't an outsider anymore. And I could see it starting to eat at her. The real turning point came during one of the planning meetings. We were discussing the auction portion of the evening, and I suggested that a portion of the funds be earmarked specifically for inclusive programs, sensory-friendly activities, scholarships for special needs tutoring, and training for teachers on neurodiversity. The room went quiet for a moment. One parent clapped. Then another. Then everyone was nodding. Except for Colleen. She tried to object, voice tight. Well, that's very specific. Shouldn't the funds be used for broader initiatives that benefit all students? I responded calmly. It does benefit all students. An inclusive environment helps everyone learn empathy, flexibility, and acceptance. Besides, we have multiple families with neurodivergent children who've expressed how meaningful this would be. I didn't even have to look around to know the room was with me. From that point forward, the shift was undeniable. More and more parents gravitated toward me. Invitations to playdates, coffee meetups, community events. Parents who had once orbited around Colleen's perfect circle were now slowly drifting towards something warmer. Something real. Colleen saw it happening. The tight smile she wore at PTA meetings. The slight edge in her voice when she saw me chatting with other moms she used to control. The way Zoe and Dylan grew quieter around Sylvia when they realized their mom wasn't being universally admired anymore. But I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The satisfaction wasn't in watching her crumble. It was in watching my daughter finally thrive. And then came the gala itself. The night that would make everything crystal clear. The night of the gala arrived like a slow-rolling thunderstorm. You could feel something electric in the air. The school had rented out a beautiful event space downtown, a restored historic ballroom with glittering chandeliers and polished hardwood floors that still creaked faintly under your heels. Parents arrived in a parade of sleek cars, decked out in cocktail dresses and tailored suits. I stood at the entrance, greeting guests alongside Allison and a few of the other committee members. I wore a simple navy dress, nothing flashy, but elegant. Sylvia, who was invited for the early part of the evening, stood next to me in a soft blue gown she'd picked herself, nervously clutching her little sequined purse. She looked up at me with wide eyes. "Mommy, do I have to talk a lot?" she whispered. "Just smile, sweetheart. If you get tired, we'll find a quiet room, okay?" She nodded and squeezed my hand. I had made sure there was a quiet space available, an adjoining room with beanbags, sensory toys, soft lighting, and noise-canceling headphones. That had been part of my proposal during planning. It was the first time this gala had ever considered the needs of kids like Sylvia. And several parents had already quietly thanked me for it. And then came Colleen. She walked in with Brian and the kids right on time, dressed to perfection as always. Dylan in his miniature tux, Zoe in a glittering silver dress. Colleen's emerald gown shimmered under the chandeliers, her designer clutch dangling off her wrist. She approached the entrance table, her smile frozen in that brittle way she wore it lately. "Well, Valerie, I must say the decorations are pleasant," she said coolly, eyes scanning the room like an appraiser evaluating a lower-end art gallery. "Thank you, Colleen," I said sweetly. "The parents really loved the more family-friendly vibe this year." She glanced at the small inclusion and kindness display table set up by the wall, where kids from our little club had contributed art projects showing what kindness meant to them. Sylvia's watercolor of animals playing together was front and center. Colleen's lips twitched. She didn't comment. The night moved on. Parents mingled, auction items were bid on, speeches were given. I mingled easily now, chatting with people who had previously barely acknowledged me at past school events. Even the head principal, Mr. Lambert, personally complimented my work on the inclusion initiative. "This is exactly the kind of progress we need to be making, Valerie," he said with a warm handshake. "You should consider joining the district committee next year." I spotted Colleen a few tables over, pretending to be absorbed in conversation with a cluster of PTA regulars, but I saw her glance over more than once. She wasn't used to not being at the center of attention. When it came time for my brief speech before the auction, I felt my stomach twist with nerves, but I also felt something I hadn't in a long time: confidence. I stood at the podium, my voice steady. "I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for coming tonight and for supporting programs that make our school a better place for all our children. Inclusion isn't just a word, it's something we model. It's something our children watch us do. And when they see us make space for every student to thrive, they learn the most valuable lesson of all: empathy." I saw Allison give me a subtle nod of encouragement from the crowd. And from the corner of my eye, I saw Colleen's smile stiffen. The applause that followed was genuine. The warmth in the room felt real. And then, the real unexpected moment happened. During the auction break, while guests were milling around and Sylvia was happily drawing with some of the other kids from the Kindness Club at their designated kids' table, Zoe came up to me. She looked nervous. Shy, even. "Aunt Valerie?" she asked softly. I knelt down to meet her eye level. "Yes, sweetheart?" "I'm sorry I said what I said about Sylvia, about her not being normal. Mommy told me to say that when Ellie's mom asked." I blinked, trying to keep my expression calm. My heart ached for her. "It's okay, Zoe," I said gently. "Thank you for telling me. That was very brave." She looked relieved. Then she scurried back to the kids' table. I stood there for a moment, hands resting on my knees, slowly exhaling. It confirmed what I had suspected all along: Colleen hadn't just allowed Zoe to say those words. She had fed them to her. The sickest part wasn't even the lie itself, it was that she was willing to use her own child to deliver it. This wasn't about one birthday party anymore. This wasn't even just about Sylvia. It was about Colleen's need to control every narrative, even if it meant contaminating her own children with that poisonous thinking. And something in me hardened. Colleen had no idea that Zoe had just confessed to me. She continued gliding around the gala like royalty, complimenting donors, laughing a bit too loud, likely assuming she still held some silent upper hand. But I knew better now. My revenge didn't need to be loud. Or public. It didn't even need to involve confrontation. The wheels were already turning. The cracks were already forming. I just needed to keep pushing, very, very quietly. In the weeks following the gala, the shift became undeniable. I didn't need to lift a finger to publicly expose Colleen, she was unraveling all on her own. Zoe's quiet confession stuck with me. Not because I needed more proof of what Colleen had done, but because it showed how deep her control ran, using her own child to twist a narrative that served her perfect image. But children aren't good at carrying secrets, especially ones that feel heavy. And I suspected Zoe's little conscience was beginning to itch. About 2 weeks after the gala, I got a call from the school counselor, Ms. Emery. She sounded gentle but serious. "Valerie, I just wanted to let you know that Zoe requested to speak with me today," she said. She was very upset. She shared that she had lied during Ellie's birthday party situation, that she was told by her mother to say certain things about Sylvia. I closed my eyes and exhaled slowly. "I see," I said, my voice calm. "Thank you for telling me." Ms. Emery continued, "I also want you to know we've scheduled a meeting with the principal, and we'll be inviting both you and Colleen in. It's important that the school addresses this properly, especially with the PTA and community trust involved." The school was taking it seriously. I felt a wave of relief. The meeting was scheduled for the following Monday. Mason took the day off to sit beside me for support. As we sat outside the principal's office, Colleen arrived, flustered, with Brian trailing behind her. She wore a stiff smile but her eyes darted nervously. We were called into the office, where Mr. Lambert and Ms. Emery sat waiting. The atmosphere was tense but professional. Mr. Lambert started calmly, "We've become aware of a concerning situation regarding misleading information provided by Zoe, as well as allegations that she may have been coached to say those things." Colleen's face flushed. "This is absurd. Children misunderstand things all the time. Zoe has been very clear and consistent," Ms. Emery cut in gently but firmly. "We're not here to assign blame, but to ensure that this behavior stops immediately. These patterns of exclusion and manipulation are deeply troubling." Colleen's composure cracked slightly. Brian stared at his hands, looking mortified. Mr. Lambert continued, "Given the role both of you play in our PTA and school community, integrity and inclusivity are essential. We'll be reviewing your position on the board moving forward, Colleen." For a moment, she said nothing. The possibility of losing her coveted PTA role, her stage, her spotlight, finally hit her. I didn't mean to cause harm. I was only trying to protect the children from an uncomfortable situation," she offered weakly. I looked at her directly for the first time during the meeting. "You weren't protecting anyone, Colleen. You were protecting yourself. And you didn't care if my daughter paid the price." Her eyes flashed briefly with anger, but she didn't respond. She knew better now. After the meeting, the fallout began almost immediately. Colleen was asked to step down from the PTA board under the guise of needing a break to focus on family. Everyone in the PTA circle knew exactly what that meant. The small community Colleen had carefully built around her started to fracture. Parents she once controlled began quietly distancing themselves. Invitations stopped. The constant admiration and attention she fed on faded like mist in the sun. What stung even more for her, I imagine, was that many of those parents now gravitated toward the community I had quietly fostered. The Kindness Club grew larger. The inclusive programs I proposed at the gala were fully funded and embraced by the school. Sylvia flourished socially, forming real, healthy friendships that were no longer dependent on her cousin Zoe's involvement. Ironically, Zoe began to seek out Sylvia more often, perhaps sensing where genuine warmth existed. I allowed it, but with cautious boundaries. I knew Zoe was still a child, caught in the crossfire of her mother's toxicity. The final satisfying twist came a few months later at the spring fundraising fair, an outdoor event open to the whole district. Allison approached me with a sly smile and handed me a folder. "Guess who nominated you for next year's PTA president?" she grinned. I opened the folder to see several nomination forms with my name on them, signed by parents from across the district. Even a few of Colleen's former loyalists. I laughed, not out of arrogance, but out of sheer disbelief at how far things had turned. I didn't seek revenge by destroying Colleen. I didn't need to. I simply built something stronger and better, and she couldn't compete with that. Her power was always an illusion built on control, exclusion, and fear of imperfection. The moment people saw what a genuine, inclusive community could look like, they chose it. The revenge wasn't public humiliation. It was watching her fade into irrelevance while my daughter stood confidently at the center of a community that finally saw her worth.